The Crown Prince of Denmark today gives the impression of a man ready to assume the throne at any moment, but this was far from always the case. We tell you how Crown Prince Frederik transformed from a disgrace to the pride of the kingdom. At the 2018 presentation of a ceremonial portrait of Crown Prince Frederik on his 50th birthday, the Danish heir looked extremely pleased and happy, laughing happily, applauding the artist Ralph Heimans and hugging his children tenderly, posing proudly against the background of the canvas for reporters. This portrait of the future king will definitely go down in history of the kingdom. With his wrinkled face, thoughtful gaze and slight smile, the heir to the throne, the oldest in Danish history since 1660, gently looks at his wife and children reflected in the mirror, while on his right side, as a reminder, is a portrait of his mother, Queen Margrethe II. Even today, at 81, the monarchess is said not to abdicate and plans to rule for the rest of her life, as her ancestors did. Some 50 years ago, the heirs just had to sit and wait their turn, the Crown Prince told writer Jens Andersen, author of the Frederik biography Under the Beam. They sat and waited until their daddy or mommy, mostly daddy, left this world. It's different now. I'm perfectly relaxed about it, waiting my turn, more relaxed than I used to be in my youth. And we must think, the prince here is not at all deceiving, because his growth and formation as the heir and the future king was really difficult and worthy of a separate story. Queen Margrethe's eldest son had two karmic qualities that largely defined him as a person. He was incredibly sensitive and very handsome. The boy felt hostage to his origins as a child. Even his name reflected solely the demands of royal protocol and nothing more. Margrethe and Henrik, the heir's parents, had to choose one name from two, either Christian or Frederik. Their son became Frederick, and their son's son was subsequently named Christian. The clearly calibrated and monotonous conveyor belt of Danish kings, suddenly interrupted by the coming to power of a woman, was to revert to the former mode of endless Christians and Frederiks, succeeding each other in turn. He and Joachim grew up as classic royal brothers. The heir and Frederick became one very early at only 4 years old, and the spare, read also, in the shadow of the crown, the fate of the spare princes and princesses of Great Britain. As children, they had little understanding of what this meant, but they saw clearly that their childhood belonged to someone else, not to them. I often asked myself, why do I have to do all this? Why can't I just be me? The Crown Prince recalled. His father, the now deceased Prince Henrik, gave him the answer. One day he sat across from his young sons and told them bluntly, "No, you are not equal to each other, because Frederick will one day be king, and you, Joachim, are his brother, but you will not be king. I will raise you equally, but only one of you will be special. And you, Frederick, must remember that from now on you have a great responsibility for the rest of your days." For the Crown Prince, as his younger brother later recalled, his father's words were a turning point. Maybe subconsciously he realized that he was different, but when you're only 5 or 6 you want, above all, to be the favorite child of your parents, not the ward of an endless staff of nannies and teachers. My father, however, apparently mindful that he was raising a future king, was too strict, and my mother was strikingly unconcerned about their lives. I never had any illusions about my gift of motherhood, Her Majesty confessed in 1998. I am not by nature too restrained, and with young children you always have to be very patient. The boys were unhappy because of this. Frederick grew up as a very shy and sentimental boy, which, of course, was at odds with his father's ideas of what a future king should be. Henrik, who was himself said to be deeply ashamed of his status as consort prince rather than king, paid particular attention to his son's discipline and education. The thoughtfulness and reverie of his eldest offspring irritated him. Frederick, as if in response, was irritated every time someone mentioned his origins and impending destiny. "I want to be an astronomer," the 10-year-old heir answered French journalists when they asked the boys either jokingly or seriously what they would like to be. "Yes, it's a wonderful hobby subject," Queen Margrethe hastened to reply with a smile after an awkward pause hung in the air. Shy and unsociable, Frederick began to actively socialize only after entering a regular school. The boy had been homeschooled until the age of 12. This is where the heir discovered his love of sports and extreme sports, which, it must be said, became even stronger when the Crown Prince joined the army and where, in his own words, he matured a little. At 21, he was sent to Aarhus University, where his mother had once taken a course as well. Some of my mother's advisors decided, great, the heir should learn government and other related disciplines, Frederik himself recounted many years later. However, the young man himself had nothing against political science. In addition, in Aarhus he was finally free, no parents and their supervision, no servants, no representation. In September 1989 Frederik came to the university to study political science. This was a grand event, for the heir to come to Aarhus, dozens of photographers and reporters to show the public as the Crown Prince goes to the institute in a nice suit and with books. But student life soon took its toll, suits were quickly replaced by t-shirts and jeans, and textbooks by alcohol and dancing. The prince finally got what he wanted, freedom. It was as if he was no longer a member of the royal family, becoming the most ordinary guy. So, at least, it seemed to him. I was my own master, the Crown Prince recalled. I felt that this city was my refuge. The press, however, did not think so. Frederik now and then hit the lens of the paparazzi in the midst of parties and outright binge drinking. The heir did not limit themselves in anything, establishing themselves in fact only two taboos: drugs and prolonged binge drinking. The Crown Prince continued to study until 1995, even spending a year at Harvard, but he seemed unable to grow up psychologically, testing himself every time and trying to get out of the shadow of the crown. And partying was not his only way of escaping reality and breathing a breath of freedom. Frederik continued his military service, ran marathons, took part in competitions. And in 2000, the Crown Prince surprised everyone when he took off on the most dangerous expedition to Greenland. Every morning I would come out of my tent and stare into the distance, hearing nothing but silence, Frederik said of that experience. He took no phone or other means of communication with his family, effectively cutting himself off from the world for months. While his younger brother lived peacefully in the castle with his first wife Alexandra and raised two heirs, Frederik seemed unable to find himself. Something similar would later be encountered by Britain's Prince Harry of Wales. Early deprived of parental support and love, he tried to forget himself at parties and in the arms of beautiful girls. In the case of Prince Frederik, there was the added responsibility of the Crown Prince, hanging over him like a sword of Damocles. Frederik was unbelievably handsome, with an open, childlike smile and a mature, trained body. Not surprisingly, his list of dates included some of the most spectacular girls in Denmark. One of them, the Danish rock singer Mary Montal. The Crown Prince was even seriously considering marriage, but here, as you can guess, intervened the Queen, who learned about the lifestyle of celebrity, immediately delivered her son an ultimatum: either a girl or the throne. Actually, in the same way Her Majesty got rid of absolutely all her unwanted sisters-in-law, the royal qualification did not pass any model Katja Storcombe, nor the fashion designer Bettina Odom. Frederik usually blossomed where no one could recognize him, where it was impossible to meet the secular public, said one of the prince's university friends. So the heir to the Danish crown also met the love of his life, Mary Elizabeth Donaldson. Today, many doubt the coincidence of this meeting. It all sounds too fabulous. Before an ordinary advertisement girl named Mary met the heir to the Danish crown, she also happened to run into a fortune teller at a local market in Sydney, who predicted her imminent meeting with an influential foreigner. I then thought it was all very funny, but never mind, the Crown Princess later admitted. And yet I've always been interested in all things supernatural. Could she have suspected that very soon the fortune teller's predictions would come true? Though, a foreigner in those days in Sydney was even easier to meet than a local, because in 2000, the city hosted the Olympic Games. But an overseas prince? Unsurprisingly, Mary couldn't recognize a blue blood in an ordinary guy named Fred, who stopped by her friend's bar one night. Something clicked in me, Mary recounted years later. Thus began their beautiful and very tender romance, which logically developed into the Danish wedding of the century. Mary was a commoner, but Margrethe II still approved of the new passion of the Crown Prince, because the girl was smart, reserved, obedient and, importantly, a foreigner. The local tradition does not welcome the royal family members to marry Danish women. In addition, the girl was willing to change even more to please Her Majesty, In the end, Mary gave up her British and English citizenship, converted to Lutheranism, dramatically changed her style, read also, The Danish Kate Middleton, 5 Fashion Rules of Crown Princess Mary, and learned the Danish language. In short, there was a lot of calculation in this union. But there was love, and that's the most important thing. On May 14, 2004, in the Danish kingdom, the real fairy tale of the prince and his Cinderella happened. At the sight of the bride, the groom was so moved that he even shed a tear. However, at that moment hardly anyone could accuse him of sentimentality. Not even, I should think, his father. From this day, Mary is mine, and I am hers, Frederik vowed at the altar. I love her and will always protect her. Margrethe is said to dote on her daughter-in-law from Australia, thanks in large part to the fact that it was with Mary that her oldest son finally settled down. The happy father of 4 children and the patron of numerous charitable and social organizations, Crown Prince Frederik in recent years is rapidly becoming the kind of heir all of Denmark wanted him to be. But, most importantly, His Highness himself seems to have overcome his childhood complexes and now fully accepts the responsibility of his high status. When Mary and I began discussing raising our children, we immediately agreed that we would spend as much time with them as possible, the Crown Prince says, apparently recalling his own childhood. This has always been important to me. No, of course, the prince did not become perfect as if by magic. In the press there are still periodic news that Frederik has had too much alcohol, and his wife again suspects him of adultery. And we don't rule out the possibility of crises in the Kronprince family, but whatever you say, as long as Frederik looks at his family as gently and sedately as he looks at it in his portrait, the world can be at peace.